Welcome to our channel. Today we have a story that will touch your heart and leave you in shock. Imagine the scene. A mother who, despite adversity, arrives dirty and tired at her son's graduation. But the real impact comes from what the young man reveals on the microphone. A revelation that completely changes everyone's perception of courage, love, and sacrifice. Get ready for an emotional journey that highlights the transformative power of love and dedication. If you haven't signed up yet, take the opportunity to click the sign up button and be part of our community. Don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends so that more people can learn about this inspiring story. Each interaction helps our channel grow and reach new audiences, allowing us to bring you more stories like this. Let's discover together how the strength of an unbreakable bond between mother and child can overcome any obstacle. Click sign up and don't miss the chance to get excited about this incredible journey. The sun was just beginning to rise over the skyline of New York City, casting a golden hue over the bustling streets. Today was no ordinary day for Lucas Miller. It was his graduation day, a moment he had dreamed about for years. He had worked tirelessly, balancing multiple jobs and night classes to reach this milestone. For Lucas, this day symbolized not just personal achievement but a victory for his small family as well. His mother, Sarah, had been his rock. Since losing her husband when Lucas was just a toddler, she had single-handedly taken on the role of both mother and father. Sarah was the embodiment of resilience and strength. She never hesitated to roll up her sleeves and do whatever it took to provide for Lucas. Her days were spent selling handmade goods on the streets, battling the cold winters and scorching summers of New York. There were days she came home empty-handed, her feet sore and spirits low, but she never showed it. To Lucas, she was invincible. The morning of the graduation was filled with a flurry of emotions. Lucas woke up early, his heart racing with excitement and a bit of anxiety. He stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his cap and gown, trying to calm his nerves. This day was as much his mother's as it was his own. He knew how much she had sacrificed, how many sleepless nights and long days she had endured to make this possible. Lucas wanted to make her proud. He rehearsed his speech one last time, the words of gratitude and love he had carefully crafted for the occasion. Meanwhile, Sarah was having a different kind of morning. She had taken up an extra shift at the local bakery the night before, knowing that every penny counted. The owner was kind enough to let her take home some leftover pastries, a small treat she hoped to share with Lucas before the ceremony. As she hurriedly made her way back to their small apartment, her mind was racing. She didn't have much, but she wanted to make this day perfect for her son. However, fate had different plans. On her way home, Sarah was caught in a sudden downpour. She had no umbrella, and the cheap raincoat she wore did little to protect her from the relentless rain. She clutched the bag of pastries close to her chest, trying to shield them from the rain as best as she could. By the time she reached their apartment building, she was drenched, her clothes sticking to her skin and her hair plastered to her forehead. But that wasn't the worst of it. As she rushed up the stairs, she slipped, falling hard on her knees. The bag of pastries flew from her grasp, scattering across the dirty floor. She let out a small cry of frustration and pain, tears mingling with the raindrops on her face. Sarah sat there for a moment, the weight of exhaustion and disappointment pressing down on her. Today was supposed to be a joyous day, and here she was, soaked to the bone, with bruised knees and no special treat for her son. She wanted to cry, to give in to the overwhelming sense of defeat, but she couldn't. Not today. Lucas was waiting for her, and she had to be there for him no matter what. With trembling hands, Sarah gathered the pastries, some of which were now squished and ruined, and made her way up to their apartment. She tried to compose herself, taking a deep breath before opening the door. As she stepped inside, she was met with Lucas's surprised eyes. He took in her appearance, the wet clothes, the scraped knees, the ruined pastries, and his heart sank. "Mom, what happened?" Lucas asked, concern lacing his voice as he rushed to her side. "It's nothing, sweetheart," she replied, forcing a smile. "Just a little rain, that's all." Lucas knew better than to press further. He could see the pain and embarrassment in her eyes, But he also saw the determination. Despite everything, she was here, just as she had always been. He wanted to say something to comfort her, but the words escaped him. Instead, he helped her to the bathroom, guiding her to sit on the edge of the tub while he fetched a towel. Sarah watched him through the mirror as he carefully dried her hair, the tenderness in his actions making her heart swell with pride. This was her son, the boy she had raised with every ounce of strength she had. She wished she could have done more for him, given him a life free from struggles and hardships, but this was the best she could do. And today, as she looked at him in his graduation gown, she knew it had been worth every sacrifice. "I'm so proud of you, Lucas," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. Lucas paused, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "Mom, you're the reason I'm here today. Everything I've achieved, it's because of you." Sarah shook her head slightly. "No, Lucas. You did this. You worked hard, you never gave up." "We did this," he corrected, his voice firm. Together. They shared a moment of silence, a mutual understanding passing between them. This day was a testament to their journey, to every hurdle they had overcome. Sarah stood up, wrapping the towel around her shoulders, trying to salvage what she could of her appearance. She had no fancy clothes, no makeup to hide the lines of hard work etched on her face, but it didn't matter. She would walk into that ceremony with her head held high, proud of her son and the life they had built together. As they made their way to the graduation hall, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling of unease. He wanted this day to be perfect, to honor his mother and the sacrifices she had made. But as they arrived at the venue, he noticed the whispers and the sideways glances directed at his mother. He felt a knot of anger and protectiveness tightening in his chest. How could they judge her, not knowing the strength and love that had brought them here? Sarah, however, walked beside him with a calm grace. She was used to the stares, the judgments. They didn't know her story, and she didn't owe them any explanations. Today was about Lucas, and nothing would take away from that. She squeezed his hand reassuringly as they entered the hall, her heart swelling with pride and love. But little did they know, this day would take an unexpected turn, one that would leave everyone present speechless and redefine the true meaning of sacrifice and love. The graduation hall buzzed with excitement as students and their families filled the seats. Brightly colored banners hung from the walls, and a stage stood adorned with flowers and a podium. Lucas scanned the crowd, taking in the sight of his peers and their families, each dressed in their finest attire. It was a stark contrast to his mother, who sat quietly beside him, her clothes still slightly damp and her hair hastily combed back. He couldn't help but notice the stares and murmurs directed at them, subtle glances that carried unspoken judgment. Sarah seemed oblivious to it all, her focus entirely on Lucas. She smiled warmly at him, her eyes gleaming with pride. To her, nothing else mattered in that moment. All the hardships, the long nights, and the countless sacrifices led to this very day. As the ceremony began, she clasped her hands together, trying to contain the overwhelming emotions swelling inside her. As the principal took the stage and began his opening speech, Lucas's mind wandered back through the years. He remembered growing up in their small, cramped apartment, the smell of fresh bread wafting in when his mother managed to bring home leftovers from the bakery where she sometimes worked. He recalled the nights when she would come home late, exhausted but never too tired to listen to him talk about his day. She would smile and nod, even as her eyelids drooped, hanging on to every word as if it were the most important thing in the world. When Lucas was 8, he had asked Sarah why they didn't have the same things other kids had. New clothes, toys, vacations. She had taken him in her arms, holding him close, and explained that they had something far more precious. "We have each other," she had said, her voice soft yet unwavering. "And as long as we have that, we have everything we need." Lucas had held on to those words, carrying them with him through every difficult moment. He had learned the value of hard work, of perseverance, and above all of love. His mother's love had been his guiding light, the beacon that had kept him moving forward even when everything seemed impossible. As the students' names were called one by one, Lucas felt a growing sense of anxiety. His name was near the end of the list, giving him ample time to reflect on the journey that had brought them here. His mother's sacrifices echoed in his mind. How she sold handmade crafts on the street corners during winter, her fingers red and raw from the cold. How she worked odd jobs, never complaining, never asking for help. She had always been there in the background, silently supporting him, even when it meant putting her own needs last. He remembered one winter when he was about 12. They had barely enough money to get by, and the heating in their apartment had gone out. Lucas had come home from school to find his mother sitting at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea. She had forced a smile and assured him everything would be fine. That night, she had bundled him up in every blanket they owned, leaving just enough to keep herself warm. Lucas had pretended to sleep, watching her shiver in the dim light of the kitchen as she worked on a crochet project. She had stayed up all night, crafting delicate scarves and hats to sell at the market, hoping to scrape together enough to get the heater fixed. The memory tightened his chest. His mother had always been his hero, but he knew she never saw herself that way. To her, she was just doing what any mother would do, protecting and providing for her child. But to Lucas, she was a warrior, fighting battles that no one else saw. She had faced every obstacle with unwavering strength and had never let him see her falter. Finally, the principal called Lucas's name, snapping him back to the present. His heart pounded as he stood up, glancing at his mother before making his way to the stage. Sarah's eyes followed him, tears welling up as she watched her son, her pride and joy, walk towards his future. She wanted to cheer, to shout to the world how proud she was, but the lump in her throat held her silent. Instead, she clutched her hands together, whispering a silent prayer of gratitude. Lucas stepped up to the podium, the microphone in front of him amplifying the sound of his heartbeat. He took a deep breath, his gaze sweeping over the audience. He spotted familiar faces, teachers who had guided him, friends who had stood by him. But his eyes returned to his mother, the only person who truly mattered in that sea of faces. He cleared his throat, his voice shaky as he began to speak. "Good afternoon, everyone. I'm honored to stand here today, but I can't take full credit for this achievement. There's someone very special who deserves to be recognized, someone who made this possible." He paused, his eyes locking onto Sarah's. She looked at him, puzzled, not understanding where this was going. The room grew quiet, the audience leaning in, intrigued by the turn of his speech. "This is for my mom," Lucas continued, his voice growing stronger. "A woman who has been through more than anyone should ever have to endure. She's the reason I'm here today. She worked tirelessly, sacrificed everything so I could have a chance at a better life. She sold crafts on the streets, worked endless hours, and never once complained. She's my hero, and I want everyone to know just how amazing she is." A murmur spread through the crowd as people turned to look at Sarah. She sat frozen, her face flushed with embarrassment and pride. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. Lucas's words washed over her, filling her with a warmth she hadn't felt in years. Lucas swallowed hard, emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "Today I want to say thank you, Mom. Thank you for never giving up, for always believing in me. I know I don't say it enough, but I love you, and I'm so proud to be your son." The hall erupted in applause, but for Lucas, the only sound that mattered was the sob that escaped his mother's lips. Sarah covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking as she cried. It was as if a dam had broken inside her, releasing years of pent-up emotions. She had always kept her feelings in check, always stayed strong for Lucas. But in this moment she let go. She allowed herself to feel the full weight of his words, the love and gratitude he had expressed so openly. As Lucas stepped down from the stage, he made his way back to his seat, his heart pounding. He wasn't sure what to expect, but when he reached his mother, she pulled him into a tight embrace. The applause continued, a standing ovation for the bond between mother and son, a testament to the power of love and resilience. "I love you too," she whispered into his ear, her voice breaking. So much. They held each other for a long time, the world around them fading into the background. In that moment, it didn't matter what anyone else thought. The whispers and stares that had once been so daunting were now meaningless. All that mattered was this unbreakable bond forged through years of hardship and sacrifice. Little did they know, this day was just the beginning. The true test of their strength and love was yet to come, and it would leave everyone in that room stunned, redefining what it means to be a family. The applause gradually subsided, leaving an emotional silence in its wake. Lucas and Sarah remained locked in their embrace, savoring the bittersweet moment. As they finally pulled apart, Lucas noticed his mother's tear-streaked face, a mixture of pride and exhaustion etched into her features. He knew this day had taken a toll on her, but it was also a testament to her strength and resilience. As they settled back into their seats, Lucas felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. For the first time in years, it seemed as though everything was going to be okay. They had made it through the toughest of times, and now, with his graduation marking the start of a new chapter, there was hope for a brighter future. Yet, in the back of his mind, a question lingered. How much more could his mother endure before life's relentless challenges broke her spirit? The ceremony continued, the names of other graduates called one by one, but Lucas's mind wandered. He thought about their life in the city, the run-down apartment that they called home, the dangerous streets Sarah had to navigate daily, and the long hours she put in just to make ends meet. Every corner of the city held memories of their struggle, but it also held stories of triumph, of a mother who refused to let her circumstances define her or her son's future. Sarah's life had been far from easy. She had lost her husband, James, when Lucas was only 2 years old, and from that day on, she had been both mother and father. The weight of that responsibility was something Lucas had only begun to understand as he grew older. She never complained, never let him see how hard it was, but he knew. He had seen the weariness in her eyes, the way her shoulders slumped when she thought no one was looking. After the ceremony, students and families mingled outside, taking photos and exchanging congratulations. Lucas noticed how other parents beamed with pride, their expensive clothes and polished appearances a stark contrast to his mother's worn attire. He felt a pang of guilt, wishing he could have given her more, wishing he could somehow repay her for everything she had done. But today, he realized, was not about appearances. It was about honoring the sacrifices she had made and the love that had kept them going. As they made their way through the crowd, a few of Lucas's friends approached, offering their congratulations. They glanced at Sarah with a mixture of curiosity and respect, their own parents standing a little straighter as they observed the interaction. Lucas introduced his mother with pride, ignoring the faint looks of pity that crossed some faces. To him, Sarah was a queen, and today she deserved to be treated like one. "Lucas, your speech was amazing," one of his friends said, clapping him on the back. "I think everyone was moved by it." "Thanks," Lucas replied, glancing at his mother. "I just wanted to make sure everyone knew how incredible my mom is." Sarah blushed, feeling out of place in this gathering of polished people. But Lucas's words had given her a sense of belonging, a reminder that her worth was not defined by her clothes or her job, but by the love she had poured into raising her son. For years, she had felt like an outsider, like she didn't belong in this world of privilege and success. But today, for the first time, she felt seen and appreciated. As they walked away, Lucas squeezed his mother's hand. "Are you okay, Mom?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. Sarah nodded, forcing a smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little overwhelmed, I guess." Lucas understood. This was not the life she had envisioned for herself or for him. But they had made the best of what they had, and today was proof that all their hard work had paid off. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more his mother wasn't telling him, a weight she carried that went beyond the struggles of raising him alone. They headed toward the exit, intending to go home and celebrate quietly. As they approached the parking lot, Lucas noticed a few of the students whispering and glancing in their direction. His stomach tightened as he overheard snippets of their conversation, words like homeless and pathetic cutting through the air. His mother seemed to notice too, her eyes fixed on the ground as she quickened her pace. Lucas's anger flared, but he kept it in check. He knew his mother didn't want to make a scene, didn't want to draw attention to the fact that they were different. They reached their car, a battered old sedan that had seen better days, and climbed in. As they drove away, the tension in the car was palpable, a silent acknowledgement of the unspoken judgments that had been cast their way. The drive home was quiet, the city streets blurring past them as Lucas's mind raced. He wanted to say something to comfort his mother, but he didn't know how. He felt helpless, like no matter what he did, he could never repay her for all the sacrifices she had made. Finally, Sarah broke the silence. "Lucas, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice hesitant. "I didn't want to bring it up before your graduation, but now, I think you should know." Lucas's heart skipped a beat. "What is it, Mom?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She took a deep breath, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "You know how I've been working extra hours lately, selling crafts and taking odd jobs? Well, it's because we're behind on the rent. I've been trying to catch up, but it's been hard." Lucas felt a lump form in his throat. He had suspected they were struggling, but hearing it confirmed was like a punch to the gut. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice strained. Sarah glanced at him, her eyes filled with guilt. "I didn't want you to worry. You've been working so hard in school, and I didn't want to distract you. I thought I could handle it, but I'm not sure I can anymore." Lucas's mind raced. He felt a surge of anger at the world, at the injustice of their situation. His mother had given everything for him, and yet life continued to throw obstacles in their path. It wasn't fair. "We'll figure it out, Mom," he said, trying to sound reassuring. "I can get a job, start helping out more. We'll get through this." Sarah shook her head. "I don't want you to have to do that, Lucas. You should be focusing on your future, on college. I don't want you to have to worry about things like this." But Lucas was already thinking about what he could do. He would find a way to help, to ease the burden on his mother's shoulders. She had carried the weight alone for too long, and it was time he stepped up. As they drove through the city, the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the buildings. It was a beautiful sight, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there was always a glimmer of hope. Lucas glanced at his mother, her face illuminated by the fading light, and felt a renewed sense of determination. He would do whatever it took to support her, to ensure that she never had to face these challenges alone again. They were a team, and together they could overcome anything. As they pulled into the parking lot of their apartment building, Lucas made a silent vow to himself. This was not the end of their story. It was just the beginning. And whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as they always had. The next few days passed in a blur of emotions and uncertainty. Lucas couldn't shake the conversation he had with his mother, and the weight of their situation hung heavily on his shoulders. He spent hours searching for job postings online, making lists of potential employers, and brainstorming ways he could help make ends meet. His mother had sacrificed so much for him, and he was determined to ease her burden, no matter what it took. Meanwhile, Sarah continued her daily grind, selling handmade crafts at a small street market in the heart of the city. She woke up before dawn every morning to prepare her goods, pouring her heart into each creation. It was a far cry from the life she had once dreamed of, but it was honest work, and it was what had kept them afloat all these years. Lucas often accompanied her on weekends, setting up the small stall and helping her arrange the crafts on display. They would spend hours in the market, watching as people passed by, some stopping to admire Sarah's creations, others merely glancing before moving on. It was a humble existence, but there was a simple beauty in it. The way they worked together, the unspoken bond that had grown stronger with every struggle they faced. One afternoon, as they were packing up for the day, an older woman approached their stall. She had a kind face and an air of sophistication, dressed in a manner that suggested she was from a different world than theirs. She picked up one of Sarah's handmade necklaces, examining it with genuine interest. "These are lovely," the woman said, her voice warm and genuine. "Did you make these yourself?" Sarah smiled, a flicker of pride in her eyes. "Yes, I did. I've been making jewelry for years now. It's how I support my son and myself." The woman nodded thoughtfully, still holding the necklace. "You have a real talent. Have you ever considered selling your work in a boutique or online? There are many people who would appreciate craftsmanship like this." Sarah hesitated, the idea clearly foreign to her. I've never thought about it, to be honest. I've always just sold them here, in the market." The woman's eyes softened. "Well, you should. You have a gift, and it deserves to be shared with a wider audience. If you're interested, I could introduce you to a friend of mine who owns a boutique downtown. She's always looking for unique pieces to sell." Sarah glanced at Lucas, uncertainty clouding her expression. It was a generous offer, but the prospect of venturing into unfamiliar territory was daunting. Lucas gave her an encouraging nod, sensing the opportunity that lay before them. "That's very kind of you," Sarah replied, her voice hesitant. "But I wouldn't even know where to start." The woman smiled warmly. "Don't worry about that. My friend is very accommodating. She loves working with new artists and helping them get their start. Here, let me give you her contact information." She handed Sarah a business card, and they exchanged a few more pleasantries before the woman departed, leaving Sarah and Lucas standing there in stunned silence. It was as if a door had suddenly been opened, offering them a glimpse into a world they had never thought possible. "Mom, this could be huge for us," Lucas said, unable to contain his excitement. "Imagine if you could sell your jewelry in a boutique. It could make such a difference." Sarah nodded slowly, her mind racing. It was a lot to take in, but she couldn't deny the spark of hope that had been ignited. The idea of expanding her business beyond the market was both thrilling and terrifying. She had always been content with the simple life they led, but maybe it was time to dream a little bigger, to take a chance on something new. "I don't know, Lucas," she said, uncertainty creeping into her voice. "What if it doesn't work out? What if no one wants to buy my jewelry?" Lucas placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've got to take a chance, Mom. You have a talent and people will see that. This could be the break we've been waiting for." Sarah sighed, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. For years, she had focused solely on survival, on getting through each day and making sure Lucas had everything he needed. The idea of pursuing something more, of chasing a dream, was foreign to her. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to take a leap of faith. "I'll think about it," she said finally, tucking the business card into her purse. "But let's not get our hopes up just yet. I don't want to set us up for disappointment." Lucas nodded, understanding her caution. He knew how hard life had been for her, how many times they had been knocked down, only to get back up again. But he also knew that they couldn't live in fear of failure. Sometimes you had to take a risk to see where it might lead. As they drove home that evening, Lucas felt a glimmer of optimism that had been missing for far too long. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a while, there was a sense of possibility. They had been given a chance, a small ray of hope, and he was determined to make the most of it. The following week, Sarah called the boutique owner, a woman named Evelyn, and arranged a meeting. Lucas accompanied her, wanting to be there for support. They arrived at the boutique, a quaint shop nestled in a trendy part of the city, and were greeted by Evelyn, a stylish woman in her 50s with a warm smile. Evelyn examined Sarah's jewelry with genuine admiration, praising the craftsmanship and uniqueness of each piece. She agreed to display a selection of the jewelry in her store, offering Sarah a chance to reach a broader audience. It was a small step, but it felt like a giant leap for them. Over the next few weeks, Sarah's jewelry began to sell. The boutique customers were drawn to the intricate designs and the story behind each piece. Sarah found herself busier than ever, working late into the night to keep up with the demand. It was exhausting, but it was also exhilarating. For the first time, she felt like she was doing more than just surviving. She was building something, creating a future for herself and Lucas. Lucas watched with pride as his mother's hard work paid off. The extra income helped them catch up on rent and even allowed them to put a little money aside for emergencies. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to give them a sense of security they hadn't felt in years. One evening, as they sat together at the kitchen table, Sarah looked at her son with a mixture of gratitude and awe. "You were right, Lucas," she said softly. "Sometimes you have to take a chance, even when it's scary." Lucas smiled, his heart swelling with love for his mother. "You've always taken chances, Mom. This was just the first time you did it for yourself." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, savoring the sense of peace that had settled over their lives. It hadn't been easy, and there were still challenges ahead, but they had come a long way. And now, for the first time, it felt like the world was opening up to them, offering them a chance to rewrite their story. As they prepared for bed that night, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. She didn't know what the future held, but she was ready to face it, knowing that whatever came their way, they would face it together. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of change and opportunity. Sarah's jewelry continued to sell well at Evelyn's boutique, and orders began to come in faster than she could keep up. She spent every waking hour working on her craft, pouring her heart and soul into each piece she made. The living room of their small apartment transformed into a workshop, with beads, tools, and wires scattered across every surface. Lucas, ever the supportive son, pitched in wherever he could. He learned how to help with the simpler tasks, like stringing beads or packaging the finished products for delivery. It became a family affair, a shared endeavor that brought them even closer together. For the first time in a long while, they felt a sense of purpose beyond just making it through each day. But as the demands of the business grew, so did the pressure. Sarah found herself caught in a balancing act, trying to maintain the quality of her work while fulfilling the increasing number of orders. The late nights took a toll on her, and Lucas could see the exhaustion etched on her face. He worried about her, about how much she was pushing herself. "Mom, you need to take a break," he said one evening as they sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by the tools of her trade. "You're working too hard." Sarah glanced up from her work, a weary smile on her lips. "I can't afford to slow down, Lucas. This is our chance, and I need to make the most of it." Lucas frowned, his concern deepening. "But what good is it if you're too tired to enjoy it? You've been doing this day and night, without any rest. You need to take care of yourself." Sarah sighed, setting down the necklace she was working on. She knew he was right, but the fear of losing this opportunity, of everything slipping through her fingers, kept her going. She couldn't bear the thought of failing, not after they had come this far. "I know," she admitted quietly. "But we've struggled for so long, Lucas. I just want to make sure we're okay, that we have something to fall back on." Lucas reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "We're going to be okay, Mom. You've already done so much. It's okay to take a step back and breathe." His words touched her, the sincerity and concern in his voice bringing tears to her eyes. She had always tried to be strong, to be the rock that held their little family together. But she realized now that it was okay to lean on him, to let him be strong for her when she needed it. "All right," she said softly, squeezing his hand. "I'll slow down. Maybe I can find a way to balance things better." They spent the rest of the evening talking about ways they could manage the business more efficiently. Lucas suggested reaching out to other local artisans for help, or even looking into hiring part-time assistants if the business continued to grow. It was a big step, but it was also a necessary one if they wanted to maintain the quality of Sarah's work without burning out. The next day, Sarah took a rare day off, something she hadn't done in months. She and Lucas spent the day together, enjoying a simple walk through the city and a quiet lunch at a small cafe. It was a reminder of what they were working for, not just financial stability, but the moments of peace and connection that made life worth living. As they sat in the cafe, watching people pass by on the busy street, Sarah found herself reflecting on how far they had come. She had been so focused on the struggle, on making ends meet, that she hadn't stopped to appreciate the progress they had made. They were no longer just surviving, they were building a life step by step, piece by piece. "I'm proud of you, Mom," Lucas said suddenly, breaking into her thoughts. "You've done so much for us. And I know Dad would be proud of you too." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat at the mention of her late husband. It had been years since he passed, but the pain of his loss still lingered. He had been her partner, her confidant, and the love of her life. Losing him had left a void that she had filled with work and the relentless pursuit of providing for their son. "I think about him every day," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I wish he could see what you've become, how strong and kind you are." Lucas reached for her hand, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "I miss him too, but I know he's with us. And he'd be so proud of you, Mom. Of everything you've done." They sat in silence for a moment, letting the memories wash over them. It was a bittersweet feeling, remembering the past while looking towards the future. But they knew that every sacrifice, every struggle, had brought them to this point, and they were stronger for it. As they made their way home that evening, Sarah felt a renewed sense of determination. She had been given a chance to build something meaningful, not just for herself, but for Lucas. And she was going to make the most of it, no matter what challenges lay ahead. In the following weeks, they took steps to manage the growing business more effectively. Sarah reached out to a local artisan collective, seeking advice and potential collaborations. She also enlisted the help of a young woman named Emily, who had a background in jewelry making and was eager to learn from Sarah. With Emily's assistance, they were able to keep up with the demand while ensuring that the quality of the jewelry remained high. It wasn't always easy, and there were days when Sarah still felt overwhelmed. But with Lucas by her side and the support of their small but growing team, she found a way to keep moving forward. The business flourished, and for the first time, they began to see the fruits of their labor. Lucas, too, found a sense of purpose in the work they were doing. He continued to search for job opportunities, but he also found fulfillment in helping his mother's business grow. He saw it as a way to give back, to repay her for all the sacrifices she had made over the years. One evening, as they were wrapping up for the day, Sarah received an email that took her by surprise. It was from a local charity organization, inviting her to participate in a fundraising event for small businesses. They had heard about her story and were impressed by her determination and the quality of her work. "They want me to speak at the event," Sarah said, reading the email aloud to Lucas, "to share our story and talk about how we built the business." Lucas's eyes widened with excitement. "Mom, that's amazing. You have to do it." Sarah felt a mix of emotions: pride, fear, excitement. The idea of standing up in front of a crowd and telling their story was daunting, but it was also an incredible opportunity to share their journey and inspire others. "I don't know," she said hesitantly. "What if I mess up? What if I get too nervous?" Lucas smiled, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You won't. You're the strongest person I know, and you have an amazing story to tell. Just speak from the heart." Sarah took a deep breath, the weight of the decision settling in. She had spent so long fighting, struggling to make a life for them, that she hadn't stopped to realize how far they had come. Maybe it was time to share their story, to let others know that even in the face of adversity, there was hope. "All right," she said finally, a determined glint in her eyes. "I'll do it. For us, and for everyone who needs to hear it." Lucas grinned, pride shining in his eyes. "That's my mom." As they prepared for the event in the coming weeks, Sarah found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. Every hardship, every sacrifice had led to this moment. And now, she was ready to stand up and share their story with the world. The day of the event arrived, and Sarah stood backstage, her heart pounding in her chest. The small auditorium was filled with people, local business owners, community members, and supporters. The air was electric with anticipation as the speakers before her shared their inspiring stories. Sarah glanced at Lucas, who was sitting in the front row, his eyes locked on hers. He gave her a reassuring nod and mouthed, "You've got this." It was all the encouragement she needed. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out onto the stage, the bright lights blinding her momentarily as she approached the podium. "Good evening," she began, her voice trembling slightly as it echoed through the room. "My name is Sarah Williams, and I'm here to share a story with you. A story about struggle, sacrifice, and the power of love and determination. She paused, gathering her thoughts. As she spoke, the memories of their journey flooded back. The loss of her husband, the sleepless nights, the countless sacrifices she had made to provide for Lucas. But it was also a story of hope, of resilience, and of finding strength in the face of adversity. "I lost my husband when my son Lucas was just a baby," she continued, her voice steadying. "It was the hardest thing I've ever gone through. I found myself alone, a single mother with no support and no idea how we would survive. But I knew I had to be strong, not just for me but for my son. He was my reason for everything." The audience was silent, hanging on her every word. Sarah felt a surge of emotion as she looked out at them, at the sea of faces that were hearing her story for the first time. "I started selling jewelry on the streets," she said, her voice soft but firm. "It was all I could do to make ends meet. I worked day and night, sometimes barely making enough to put food on the table. But through it all, my son was my light, my reason to keep going." She saw a few heads nodding in the audience, a few tears being wiped away. Her words were resonating, striking a chord with those who had faced their own struggles. "One day," she continued, "I had the opportunity to showcase my jewelry at a local boutique, thanks to a woman named Evelyn who believed in me. That moment changed our lives. It was the break we needed, and it set us on a path to build something greater than I ever imagined." Sarah's voice grew stronger as she spoke, the passion and determination evident in her words. She told them about the long nights, the challenges of running a business while being a single parent, and the incredible support she had received from Lucas. "He worked alongside me," she said, glancing at her son with pride. "He learned how to string beads, how to package orders, and most importantly, how to never give up. We became a team, and together we turned our small business into something more than just a means of survival. It became a symbol of our strength, our resilience, and our love for each other." The room was completely silent, the audience captivated by her story. Sarah felt a sense of empowerment as she stood there, sharing the journey that had defined their lives. "But there's something I need to say," she added, her voice taking on a more somber tone. "There's a part of this story that I've never shared before, not even with Lucas." Lucas's eyes widened in surprise, a puzzled look crossing his face. Sarah took a deep breath, bracing herself for what she was about to reveal. "In the early days," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "when things were at their worst, there was a moment when I thought about giving up. A moment when I didn't think I could do it anymore. I was exhausted, overwhelmed, and I felt like I was failing my son. There was a day when I had nothing left to give." The audience held its breath, the weight of her words sinking in. Lucas stared at her, a look of shock and concern on his face. "I was standing on the edge," she continued, her voice breaking. "I thought about leaving it all behind. But then, in that darkest moment, something happened. I heard Lucas's voice. He was just a baby, but he called out to me. And in that moment, I realized I couldn't leave him. I couldn't abandon him, no matter how hard things were." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she spoke, the raw emotion of that memory flooding back. "That was the turning point for me," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I made a promise to myself that day that no matter what, I would keep fighting. For him, and for the life we deserved." The room was filled with the sound of muffled sobs, the audience moved by the depth of her vulnerability. Lucas sat frozen, tears welling in his eyes as he listened to his mother's words. "I want you all to know," Sarah said, her voice growing stronger, "that it's okay to have moments of doubt. It's okay to feel like you can't go on. But in those moments, remember why you started. Remember the people who love you, who need you. And remember that you are stronger than you think." She paused, looking out at the audience with a fierce determination. "We are all capable of overcoming the impossible," she said, her voice ringing with conviction. "We are all capable of creating something beautiful out of the darkest moments of our lives." The room erupted in applause, a standing ovation that seemed to last forever. Sarah felt a rush of relief and pride wash over her as she stood there, basking in the support and admiration of the crowd. She had done it. She had shared their story, their truth, and it had made an impact. As she stepped down from the stage, Lucas rushed to her side, his eyes red from tears. "Mom!" he choked out, pulling her into a tight embrace. "I had no idea. You were so strong. You are so strong." Sarah hugged him back, holding him close. "I did it for you," she whispered. "For us. And I would do it all over again in a heartbeat." They held each other for a long moment, the bond between them stronger than ever. The room buzzed with energy as people approached them, offering words of encouragement and gratitude. It was overwhelming, but in the best way possible. In the days that followed, Sarah's business gained even more attention. Orders flooded in, and opportunities arose that she had never imagined. But more than the success, it was the knowledge that she had touched people's lives that meant the most to her. She had shown them that no matter how difficult the journey, there was always hope. And as they stood together, watching the sunset from the balcony of their apartment, Sarah and Lucas knew that this was just the beginning. They had faced the storm and come out stronger on the other side. "Thank you, Mom," Lucas said softly, his eyes shining with love and admiration. "For everything." Sarah smiled, her heart full. "Thank you, Lucas, for being my light, my strength. I couldn't have done it without you." As the sky turned shades of pink and orange, they stood there side by side, ready to face whatever came next. Because no matter what challenges lay ahead, they knew they would face them together, with love, resilience, and an unbreakable bond.